Welcome to Raiders on the Record, the podcast featuring Hastings High School athletics. I'm Athletic Director Trent Hansen. My colleague Tim Hanneberg and I work together to bring you the stories of Raider sports. We are thrilled to share conversations with the athletes, coaches, and alumni that represent Raider Nation. Check back weekly and be sure to share this podcast with your friends in the Raiders Network.
Dr. Peter Zach is a 1996 graduate of Rochester Mayo High School. After graduating from college, he spent time coaching and teaching in Mankato, Texas, Bloomington, and then found his way to Hastings. During his time at Hastings, Pete taught at both the middle school and high school and coached a wide variety of sports. These sports include ninth grade football, middle school football, head coach for track and field, and an assistant for girls basketball. Pete was a coach on both the 1996 girls basketball state championship team and the 2001 boys football state championship team. Pete has also coached his 4 children in a variety of sports such as football and basketball. Pete has some great stories from his years of coaching and awesome advice for parents, coaches, and student athletes. Sit back and enjoy. All right, here we are with Dr. Peter Zach. Coach Zach, walk us through here. We got a couple questions here to start off with, just to get some background information on you. So first one, let us know your hometown, what high school you graduated from, your graduation year, and then any other info about you growing up that your fans here want to know about.
Oh, well, good evening. I was born in Rochester, Minnesota, a proud graduate of Rochester Mayo. I was a Spartan, graduated in 1986. Growing up, I was the son of a coach and math teacher and the son of a stay-at-home mom who later went back to work when I was 13 years old to become a nurse. So that was my growing up with a dad who was a coach. Was a interesting way to grow up. You learn certain things pretty quickly from your dad about what was important and kind of the path forward.
Oh, that's neat. So we do focus around a lot about sports here on the podcast. So walking back, take us down to Rochester, Minnesota. What was one of your best or one of your earliest sports memories growing up?
You know, I was kind of a border kid, Tim, when it was time for cuts. We had majors and minors, and I was always kind of the best minor and the worst major. And then the next year I would go up and I would be one of the middle majors. And so I think memories were always tryouts was always interesting back then. See which team you were on. Success, I got to come up with the majors and pitch one time, and we won a league championship for whatever that was worth. And I got to be part of that. But the youth memories for me, the best youth memories were just playing with your buddies and the chance to play football with your buddies, baseball. We didn't have traveling sports, so that wasn't really a thing. I remember 6th grade, we were going to play Hospitality House from Minneapolis in basketball. We thought that was the greatest thing ever because traveling just wasn't a thing. We were just, and for good or bad, you played in-house sports. And after that, then you went and you played in the Big 9 conference through high school. We didn't have a ton of exposure to what was going on in the metro area. And I think that was maybe it might've been nice to be exposed to that, but it was also nice just to kind of live in your own little world too. So that's what it was like in Rochester.
Nice. Yeah. So growing up too, I always like asking this question and seeing where people came from too. So take us back to Rochester once again. What was one of your first jobs growing up? I always bring it up now because it's happened so many times. I had a string of people come through that detasseled corn, and that was their first job growing up. And it sounds like one of the worst experiences of all time. So take us back to you growing up. What was one of your first jobs growing up?
Yeah, my first job growing up was I was a morning paper boy.
Okay.
And we delivered papers. For 3 years, I delivered papers, meaning I was up every morning delivering papers. And it was a Monday through Sunday route. Sunday, mom and dad would drive me once in a while because those papers were heavier on Sundays. But for the most part, you were on your own.
Yeah.
And that's just what you did. And I didn't know any differently. I just got up every day until finally in 9th grade, I didn't have my paper route anymore. And life was pretty good, sleeping in just a little bit longer. But those early lessons teach you a lot of things like discipline. And there's no sick days when you're the paper guy. The paper needs to be delivered. So figure it out and get them delivered.
Yeah. It reminds me of, you ever hear the Mitch Hedberg joke about deliver newspapers? He's like, I had a paper route. I had to go to 120 houses or one dumpster. So I always like that one. That was always a good one.
the best and the saddest 3 weeks, yet the best 3 weeks, is when the Minneapolis Tribune actually went on strike and didn't produce newspapers for 3 weeks. It was the greatest 3 weeks because it was a nice break.
But then you get out of your sleep schedule, and then you got to get back to it, and then it's probably a little rough coming back, huh?
Yeah. And every I spent my profits on buying a cookie at Hardee's during the paper route. So, but it was a nice thing to do when you were a kid.
Do you think that you talked about the discipline with that paper route? Do you think that transitioned you into sports pretty well too?
Oh, absolutely. Probably more than anything was just commitment. Like I said, the papers needed to be delivered, and you were the guy that was going to deliver them, come rain or shine. I still remember when they struck. I wrote personal notes on all the newspapers and taped them to the front page of the paper. And a couple of people actually called the people at the Star Tribune and said, it was just nice that my paper boy let me know what was going on. And those little extra things I think you learn. And that actually, for me, Tim, led to my job as a senior in high school, where I actually worked for the Rochester Post-Bulletin. I wrote a column every week on school notes. So it was always a love of journalism and a love of being around the newspaper. I was editor of my school paper. And so that's what really led to my love of sports and journalism, in fact.
Yeah. And we'll get to it later, but obviously your son Colby is down in Missouri right now doing the same thing. So do you think you kind of pass on a little bit of that to your son Colby?
Yeah, I actually went to the University of Minnesota to be a journalist. I was going to be the next Sid Hartman. I got in their school of journalism. Clearly that probably worked out because Sid only died a couple of years ago. But that was always my dream, to be in journalism. And then we'll probably talk later, but things started changing dramatically when I started working with kids.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So take us back to where we're at now. Let's walk through your current role, your occupation, and then we'll get to some other stuff too. We'll rewind a little bit in a little bit too as well.
Sure. Well, currently I'm the assistant principal at Egan High School. I'm in my 17th year at Egan, in the same role. We've had the same principals team at Egan now for 16 years. So we're with a lot of people that we trust a great deal. I really have one of the best jobs possible. And so that's what I've been doing now for the past 17 years.
Yeah. So walk us back then. Let's start at the beginning of your educational career. Where did you start teaching right away? When did you get into coaching? What sports you coached? And let's just kind of walk through there.
Sure. So where it really started for me was my sophomore year of college. At the University of Minnesota, I went to Maine and worked at a sports camp, and I did that for 10 summers. And it was at Maine where I realized that I really enjoyed coaching. I loved working with kids. It was also like coaching at an orphanage, where you only had to see the parents on Parents Weekend, and that was it. You just got to coach. And so it was easy to fall in love with coaching. I then was a student at Mankato State High School. I did some coaching while I was at Mankato West in college, worked for an amazing man who was a lawyer we were back to 5 a.m. practices, and learned a ton from a fellow named Bailey Blethen. After college, I graduated and I decided I wanted to go south, and I wanted to coach football in Texas. So I went to Texas and I coached football for a couple of years, opening Freeport Middle School. My second year, leaving with the principal to open up a brand new school in Clear Creek, Texas, which is in League City. And then getting to coach really everything you wanted to coach when I was down there. My first year, I taught Texas history, which was interesting. It was a year-long course. Coming from Minnesota, that was interesting. I coached football, basketball, and track. And as I was leaving to the new middle school, interesting, the head football coach, who didn't teach, they just coached football, came to me, and Freddie Bolton was his name. And Freddie's about 2 weeks before we were getting ready to end the school year said, "I heard you're leaving." I said, yeah, I'm going to Clear Creek. He goes, "Well, here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to bring you to the high school to teach here. I'm going to make you my cross country coach. You'll be my receivers coach in football, but receivers coach, you can do, I know they're at the same time, but you just practice cross country in the morning. You'll be the receivers coach in the afternoon. You'll be the assistant basketball coach, and you'll be the assistant track coach all at the high school. What do you think of that?" And back then I was like, oh, but I'd already committed to this man named Doug Reed to go open up a new middle school. And so did that, went there for a year, and with always the desire to come back to Minnesota. All my family and friends were here. Interviewed at Hastings High School. Rich Clymer was the principal then, did not get hired by Rich, but Rich called Lenny Schwartz, who was the principal at the middle school, said, "You need to meet this guy." I interviewed at the middle school and got hired at the middle school. I taught there for 4 years. while I was teaching there, I was also coaching girls basketball, track, and football at the middle school. Then I became a ninth grade football coach when I came to the high school. Went into Rich's office one day and there was a social studies position open. And I said, Rich, I'm wondering if you'd consider me for the high school social studies position. And he said, give me 5 minutes. I got to talk to the department chair, got hired and was at the high school for 3 years, actually 4 years. Went and opened up the new high school. And at that time, Rich Clymer, who was a real mentor to me, talked to me about just life in general and about making some money. And my wife, Michelle, and I were to the point where we wanted her to be able to stay home with our kids if in fact we had kids. So that's when I decided, well, it's time to become a principal. And through Rich's guidance and others, Paul Veit, Mike Johnson, became a principal in Bloomington for 4 years, and then moved from Bloomington Olson Middle School to Egan High School. And that's where I landed as a principal. I still miss teaching a great deal. I really do. It was probably the best part of my life, teaching and coaching. The best part of my life's not too bad either, but there's just something about being a teacher and a coach.
So obviously over that long teaching span as well, and probably a little bit in the principal stuff, you've done a lot of coaching. Maybe walk us through some of you kind of hit on a little bit of the coaching,
Sure.
a lot of the teams you did, but maybe go in a little bit more depth about maybe some of the teams you coach, maybe some of the bigger highlights of those teams as well. And then maybe some of the kind of big experiences you had with those teams as well.
Sure. Yeah. So middle school sports in Texas, like I said, into the high school. And then when I came to Hastings, Don Miller hired me to be the boys head track and field coach, which I really enjoyed that a great deal. Trent Hansen actually was one of my jumpers. Just missed out on going to state. Trent did. And he was just such a great competitor and a great practicer, even as a senior in high school, kid that was still dedicated to what he was doing in track and field. Really enjoyed track and field. There's two types of sports. There's sports like track and field or wrestling, where you're either better than your teammate or you're not. And that's how coaches a lot of times determine lineups. Sports like basketball and football, there's more subjectivity involved. So that was nice to coach a sport like track where you're fast, you go here. Really, the only subjectivity was relay. So I really enjoyed coaching track. At the same time I was coaching track, I was coaching middle school football. And then I was the assistant girls basketball coach to a gal named Melissa Young, who lasted a year. I had interviewed to be the head coach and didn't get it. And then the next year I interviewed when Melissa left, and Don hired Nicole Shaw, which was a great hire. She took over the girls program and I got to be her assistant, and I was her assistant for 4 years. Highlights with the girls basketball was, they had a lot of change, or a lot of different coaches that had come through, and it was important for us to establish some continuity. I think the girls would probably still remember 2-a-day practices, getting up in the morning or going out for a run before practice actually began, even in the afternoon, maybe back to the mornings. And just, I think with basketball, just we had a lot of talent. I mean, even in Melissa Young's first year and in Nicole and I with our first year, the Diddy kid was really just a terrific player, and complemented by a lot of kids that played college sports. And people look back and say, God, they were so good. But will Hastings ever get that? I don't know. Get 6 kids on the same team that all go and play college sports. That's really how you're going to do it. And, we had some success with the girls. And then, it was interesting, the year that we won the state title in 1996. And that was Tim, probably the pivotal year in my life. My dad being an old coach, when I got hired in Hastings, first of all, he just said, well, that's the school with the field. I'm like, okay, for a guy, my dad being a former head football coach at Kimball, Minnesota, knowing about Hastings being, is just for the field and coming to Hastings. So mom and dad would come watch. And then dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. The year before he won the state championship. And in fact, the year that we won the state championship, dad died in January of that season. And I still remember my mom calling me in science class at the time. I was at the middle school and saying, you need to come home. And mom had never called and said, you need to come home. So the interesting thing about that is we were playing Tartan that night. Both teams were 12-2, and we were playing them for first place in the conference. And so I came home, and knowing that we had that game, and I was young then. I was 27, I was 28, and I, wasn't thinking as well as I should have. And I still remember, Tim, talking to my dad, who was on his deathbed essentially, and saying, Dad, I'm gonna go back to Hastings. I'm gonna coach in that game, and then I'm gonna come back. I'll be back around midnight. By then, Dad was pretty incoherent, and my mom said, "Yep, that's what you're gonna do." And as I was, you kind of make this, and then my wife Michelle eventually said, "I don't think that's the right thing to do." Oh. And the voice of reason, right? Mm-hmm. So I stayed back, and it was interesting. My dad did pretty well, and at about midnight, he really started slipping. So I think my dad really thinks I went back to coach that game, which I never speak for the dead, and it bothers me when people speak, but I think that's probably what he wanted me to do, is go coach the game. So the hard part about that, Tim, was, your dad's, I was eulogizing my father at his funeral, and I looked out, and there was the basketball team. And this would have been February 2nd. We were really hitting a groove, and we were just beating everybody. And for those girls, and for me, I think that was a kind of appreciation of, it's really more than just sports here. Mm-hmm. They saw their coach at a very vulnerable stage. I came back and met with the girls a couple of days after the funeral, and I was ready to go, and we cried together. And it was a pretty powerful moment. I think it brought a lot of us together. If we weren't already together, I was okay, we're on the page and we're going. It by no means that's why we won the state championship, but it was just one of those defining moments for me as a coach. And then to take the girls and really roll through sections and get to Williams Arena and play. And those kids faced a lot of adversity when we went to Williams Arena. People forget we were supposed to play the 9:00 game, but the Gophers had an NIT game, so the 9:00 game ended up being a 3 p.m. game. And we got a technical foul in the third quarter for illegal substitution, something that would never be called, and it was called. And a girl by the name of Leslie Miller hit about 5 jump shots for us to win the game in that quarterfinal against Burnsville. Semifinal, we played Shakopee. The kicker before that was Rochester Mayo and Osseo played before us, and they were the 2 best teams in the state, clearly 6 D1 kids. And, we were just this team from Hastings in blue and gold jerseys, and they played. And Williams Arena actually went to the second deck that game, the first time a girls tournament had ever done. Well, there they go play in just an amazing game, and Osseo beats Mayo, and here comes the Raiders. So we ended up beating Osseo, or Shakopee, like 39-33, and it was ugly. It was just ugly. And I've heard some of the girls on podcasts talk about, the next day I'm in the hotel room, and Don Miller, athletic director at the time, calls it, "Have you read the paper? Have you read the paper?" I'm like, "No, Don, I haven't read the paper yet." "Get the paper and read the paper." So I get the paper, and the governor had come out and said that game should have been the championship, and it was decided. And so we got Nicole and the head coach, and we pulled the girls together at the hotel and said, "We're going back. We're going back to Hastings. This is Saturday morning. We're going to get a shower and have a shoot around and ride the bus back." And you just kind of make those decisions on the fly, and did that. Had our shoot around, got back to Williams Arena to play, sitting there about an hour before the game, and Dark Star, who worked for WCCO, comes down and sits next to Nicole Shaw and says, "Coach Shaw, I'm Dark Star from WCCO." And all of a sudden it just hit me like, ooh, this is kind of a big deal. This is, if CCO is broadcasting it, and I would hear stories later of people driving through Kentucky, coming back from spring break and getting the signal on CCO at night and listening to the championship. The best part of that whole experience, Tim, or there were a lot of greats, but one was just walking around in the lobby an hour before and just seeing all the people from Hastings. It was awesome. It was like this community really embraced these girls and what they were doing. And it was cool to see a community do that. We won the championship. After the game, I still remember Pat Regan had sent a coach bus for us, and the girls decided we're going to ride the school bus, because the Kniffs were the ones that had brought us to and from every game. And we rode that school bus home as the best decision we ever made, because when we crossed the bridge into Hastings, I remember at the point, now it's a Holiday Station up top on Highway 61, we could see a line of cars coming down from the hill to the right of Highway 61. They're like, okay. And they had a caravan, and the police were waiting for us, and the police drove us through town. And as we crossed the bridge, the old Jury's Inn was there at the time, and Danny McGinnis had emptied the bar, and all of them were out on the bus giving us high fives, things you couldn't do in a coach bus, right? Yeah. But in a school bus, you could do that. And came back and had a pep rally. I saw friends of my brothers who I didn't even know were basketball fans that came back for the pep rally. 700 people back in the gym, and great memories. We'd end up at the governor's mansion. And so those were the highlights of basketball season. We had the same type of highlights in football season where, Bob Majeski and what he did. I mean, it was unbelievable, but we also had dudes. I mean, we just flat out had dudes. We had great girl athletes and we had great boys at a time I don't think Hastings will maybe ever see again in terms of kids that could just really play. And football had great success in the section finals and then broke our way and I think played in 6 state tournaments and winning the championship in 01, losing on the way to Cretan, but winning it in 01 was just, just great memories for the kids and for me.
2 things I want to ask you about too about that. Number one, it did get brought up a couple of times. The newspaper article that was written about the our 1996 basketball team, and I remember I think it was Erin. She was saying in her interview, she said, "Hey, let's write them back," or something along those lines, or let's write them back and call them that that we're not this little town and they better come to play. And then I think she said you were the one that stepped up and said, let's just go out there and beat them. That we don't need it. We don't need to write them back. Let's just go out there and beat them. So she said that was pretty powerful that they're like, yeah, let's just go out there and show them up. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Words are cheap, right? It's just, it's your actions. It just put us in a no lose situation. Let's just go out and play. And we played with like a team with no pressure and they played like a team with pretty tight sphincters, really through the whole game. They pulled ahead of by 11 in the third quarter and we Bessie Talifus hit a big shot at the end of the third quarter to bring it to even. And it was great. One of the things we did during that season, Tim, was we scrimmaged against the 9th grade boys constantly and Jake Moore. And he would bring his boys and he would make equal teams out of his boys, but our boys and girls would go at it. And it was just fantastic. So Jake and he had his role in football and he was such a great 9th grade basketball coach, but he had a huge role in developing that girls basketball team for the willingness to give his practice time to make our girls better. And we made his kids better too, but those were the really fun parts. I still remember seeing Jake in the stands right when we went down for halftime and we both were tied and because we didn't have no one gave us a chance. And Jake and I made eye contact. It's like, okay, here we go. We got this. And it ended up turning out pretty well for us. Yeah.
Another parallel I think is pretty neat between the girls basketball season and the boys is then 1995, the girls basketball season team, I should say, they took second in the section and didn't make it to the state tournament. And then obviously the next year they punched through, and the boys football team, obviously they take second in 2000 and then they win it in 2001. What do you think, being associated with both those teams, what do you think that maybe loss taught them or taught the coaches or taught the girls, or maybe kind of put that hunger in them to come back the next year and do even better than the year before?
I think that when you get to that final, you're just kind of on a roll and you're at times you're happy to get to the final. Okay, let's see what happens. And I said it before, we really have nothing to lose. But there is such a big difference between a section final and breaking through to the state tournament. And that's probably the hardest thing you do, right? I've seen that in almost every sport where once you break through, you know what it takes and you're willing to work even harder the next year to get to that level. And, truthfully, Tim, we were as good the year after we won the state tournament. We still were really good and we got upset in the section semis by Stillwater, and we still had a hell of a team that probably would have made a run in the state tournament. Just, basketball is a short game and sometimes the balls just don't bounce the way you want them to bounce.
Yeah. So you get done maybe wrapping up with you coaching high school sports too, but talk to us about coaching your own sons. Obviously, you've had a bunch of sons that have come through the high school, multiple different sports as well. Obviously football, basketball, track, and tennis are really big in your family. So walk us through all those sports and how cool it's been to see your own boys come through the high school and to be a part of their lives growing up, coaching them as well, and all those friends as well over the past, 18, 20 years.
Yeah, I really wasn't going to coach my boys. I was a principal, had already done the coaching thing, and I just really wanted to watch them play and really sit back and enjoy the moment. Then I spent one baseball practice with a good fella, who just didn't really understand coaching, in terms of breaking kids up in stations and, having activity. And I was in the outfield of a T-ball team, and standing in the other outfield with his T-ball team was Todd Levis. And I still remember, and Todd will tell you a story too. I looked at Todd Levis and I said, "Levis, next year, you and I." And he's like, "Okay." And that led to he and I coaching probably for 10 years together. And So that was the value I got. For one of coaching was just the relationships you made with all your fellow coaches and having those relationships. But then, the chance to coach your kids is the greatest thing you can ever do. And I've said that, football, we had a great run and it was really fun. And, being on the ninth grade staff was cool. You're up in the press box thing, and basketball was really intimate being on, as the assistant. But there is still nothing better than a Little Raider Saturday. Mm-hmm. There is nothing better when it's 42 degrees and the steam is kind of coming off the kids and the sun is breaking through, and you're just sending these kids into, I believe football is the best sport there is. And the chance that you get to do that with your kids and their buddies is pretty special. So Little Raiders was my passion. I loved every minute. I wasn't going to coach Little Raiders either. And Bob Majeski called me and said, we need another coach. I said, all right, I'll coach. And best decision I ever made. Coached 6 years of Little Raiders with the kids all the way through, Joe and Levi, Colby, and then Brady. Had fun with that. Royal Blue forever is what we said. And then Brady played on silver, and it was okay. But Royal Blue is kind of our color. Baseball, Tim, I think as parents, you've got to make decisions with kids, and you could put kids in all these traveling programs and all that kind of stuff. And I think by the end, it's a lot. And a lot of kids do it and they're successful. With our boys, we were going to play in-house baseball. Jim Olson and some others created this Raider Nation program, which we just loved. So we played Raider Nation, and it just gave us our kids a great in-house experience. My kids still talk about Cubs and being on the Mets and all those types of things. So, and for us, it was summertime meant, we could go to the cabin and do those types of things and play in-house baseball. Then we had the Little Raiders. Tennis, I didn't coach as much tennis. I didn't. Sadie Reiners and the amazing tennis program at Hastings took care of that. I just got to be a fan in a chair, but it was Steve Nielsen. And it's just the benefit of playing all the sports, who I think the boys were in 5th grade. And I said, have you ever thought about tennis for your boys? We were baseball players, macho baseball players. And I said, no, not really. And 6th grade, Joe played tennis in the family, and Joe fell in love with it. Even Levi fell in love with it. Even though he was a better thrower than he was a tennis player, he could still play tennis. So we just had a great chance in tennis. But the chance to coach your boys and just teach them all the values and, what you really believe in, and the hard work, and most importantly, how to play the game, I think is the most important thing you do as a youth coach. The kids still come around, and I'm still referred to as coach by Joe and Levi's friends. And that's important to me, because for them, I think we were good role models and good leaders about how we were going to do things. We were going to do things the right way. We weren't afraid to compete. I see now these teams they win 10 AA state championships and things like that. And well, that just means if you didn't win AAA, that means there's 16 teams better than you, and what have you really accomplished? So we always tried to play up to the top level. It was a challenge at times, but it was probably the most rewarding thing. I know Fike and the basketball program appreciated that we weren't trying to win some state championship. We were just going to play. And, we're 500 or better, but the kids really enjoyed the competition. It's fun for them to see these kids now in college who they can say, we played against a lot of those kids. So that was the beauty of coaching your kids. And the other thing about coaching your kids is your wife's a part of it too, right? And all the moms and dads, and those have become our lifelong friends. That those are the relationships that we built with those parents as our kids were going through, and those are the people that we still hang out with.
Yeah. What about any challenges or difficulties coaching your own kids? I know that sometimes it's hard to take off that hat, when you get home, that coaching hat, and put on the parenting one too. But any challenges, or how'd you navigate that and steer around those challenges in life?
Yeah, I think it was probably a bigger challenge for my kids than it was for me. I could light up Levi on a regular basis just because he just needed to be lit up. And at times it was an example, like, you're not afraid to light up your own kids. You probably go a little extra hard on your own kids when it's time for that discipline. So I think it's a little bit harder for them. To be honest with you, I never worried about playing my kids too much. I just played the kids, and whoever played. And I very rarely ever thought to myself, I'm playing my kid. Now, that's me. There might've been parents that were thinking that. I didn't really give a rip about that. So, we're just out there competing. But again, it wasn't about the games for me. It never was. It was about the practices and the skills that we were building in practices, the fundamental skills that we were building, the character lessons that we were teaching. And I always told my parents, we're raising young men here. These are future young men. And, if there was a challenge, it was parents at time, and it was pretty simple. I would talk to parents and I would tell them players play, coaches coach, and parents cheer. And that's all you do is you cheer. If you want to coach your kid's going to be sitting next to me. And we took care of that pretty early with one of our kids. Kid sat next to me and dad looked at me and I looked back at dad and dad goes, I got it. And those things, if you nip those things in the bud early, we're trying to raise parents as well as kids. And I think the parents that we sent to the high school level, because their kids had played for us, understood how to parent too. And that was also gene pool too, because we just had really great parents.
You talked about your dad, obviously as a coach. Obviously you were looking up to him as well, and maybe one of the biggest reasons why you got into coaching. So if you want to talk about him, that's great, or talk about another coach that you really looked up to that kind of steered you into that education or steered you into the coaching route as well. So who do you think that coach was that really had a big impact on you in your life?
To be honest, Tim, I saw the toll that coaching took with my dad. As a former head coach and high school coach, it was hard for him. And he later became a ninth grade coach for like 20 years. It's hard for him to coach me. So that's really why I wanted to become a journalist. And then I realized, like I said, after that summer I spent in Maine, that I really wanted to work with kids. Then I appreciated my dad even more for what it was. So he was always a great role model for me. The coaches though that really stuck out would be like Bob Majeski, Nicole Shaw, who was our girls coach, and the lessons I learned from people like Gary Burr, that I had a chance to coach, but really Jake Moore is a coach that I just learned a ton from. And my kids loved playing for him. He was hard, boy. He was hard on kids, but man, the passion that he coached with and the commitment to excellence. When your kids are practicing 3 hours a day during winter break, and there's 6 of them that show up and 2 of them are your kids, you're like, okay, this is, if he's going to be that committed to you, you be that committed to them. So I think Jake would probably be one of the ones that I probably most hold in the highest regard.
Nice. So talk about your kids for a little bit too. Obviously you have 4 boys. If you just want to talk a little bit about each of them, and then I think we've talked a lot about them so far, and some of the sports they played and stuff like that. But if you want to give a little shout out to them and kind of what they're doing in life right now too, that'd be great.
I would love to do that. Yeah. Oldest Joe is going to graduate this spring from Eau Claire with a degree in business and data analytics, business marketing, data analytics, something his mom and I know nothing about, his mom being a teacher. So he'll be out looking for a job. I think Joe still has a passion to work with kids, but he's going to start with business. And I think someday dreams of opening up a summer camp. Levi's going to student teach next fall. He'll get a degree in social studies and teach and coach. He's going to be a great coach, but he's going to be a really great teacher. He's just smarter than a whip. And it was fun watching him the other day get lesson plans ready, and just, coming from teachers, he gets it. Colby's at Missouri, second year at Missouri in journalism, just really having fun, working very hard, volunteering 3 nights a week at the TV station, working 2 nights a week at the TV station. He's going to get what he earns, and he knows he's in a business where he's got to compete. And so that's great. And the love of my life is Brady. Brady's a senior this year at Hastings. He's just wrapped up his 8-year career as a ball boy for the football team. He's basketball manager. After getting cut last year, he took on the role of manager and has really embraced that. Tennis, he's all conference in tennis last year. He'll be on the varsity tennis team this year. And he's just the joy of my life. He's my sports guy, flat out. He's the guy that everything revolves around. Next year, we're looking, possibly there's a program at Bethel that he might be attending next year. So we're looking at that and trying to figure out some options for Brady.
Nice. That's awesome. Moving forward, then I guess, are you coaching anything else in the future? Are you're hanging up the coaching hat? What are you looking forward to in the future? I guess maybe how many more years you're staying with education? What are you thinking about for your future?
Yeah. After the boys were done and I was pretty much done coaching, then it was, how do you get involved with the high school? And so I went to Fike, and Dana and Mick Willett, the coaches, said, how can I help? And a lot of the things we did on our own were just things that we thought we would help the program. Basketball, I got involved with DJing during games. Mm-hmm. I had the best seat in the house, created some really fun atmospheres. Coaches versus Cancer night, Farmer Appreciation night, just lots of fun that brought people into the game. And for me, was just a way to stay involved with the kids. Football, we built a ship that we have those down at Todd Field. We had a lot of fun with that, and that was a nice way to stay involved with the football program, cleaning stadiums. And I think, having been a coach, I think you just look for ways that you thought parents could help you. And so that's what I've always kind of done with Mick and tennis. I just said, whatever I can do to help. I think I was an assistant coach in charge of facilities, and I ran his tournaments for him. So whatever we can do as those strengths. I do see myself, I would like to coach within the next couple of years. I have a desire to come back, go to Egan and coach freshman football. We've talked about it for a long time. I think I'll stay in this role as an assistant principal.
Mhm.
I used to have a desire to be a head principal, and I really don't have that anymore unless a really great opportunity came along. I like what I do, and it would be fun to get back into coaching. I certainly miss it. It was the best. There's nothing like being a coach.
For sure. And just the amount of kids that you can work with on a yearly basis, on a daily basis, on a yearly basis. And obviously with you coaching, I mean, you took coaching track and football and basketball and everything else. You just get a huge amount of opportunities to work with kids and kind of refine your skills. So it is a pretty unique opportunity, so.
Yeah, it's as much as it's the season, it's the 9 months off season that you get to know the kids even better.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you get this in wrestling, and the summers that we spend together working in the weight room and doing that. We used to laugh. There used to be two teams that used to go to the weight room when I was coaching. It was the wrestling team and the girls basketball team. Mm-hmm. And when you expected the girls to be in the weight room, well, you were in the weight room. It's amazing how many conversations you could have with somebody while you were down in the weight room. And just that commitment to excellence and that dedication, you just tried to model that. And so those relationships, I don't get those relationships in my job anymore with kids. I get them with teachers, but not nearly with kids. So those are things that you miss.
Yeah, especially too. I know what you're saying with something like the weight room too. When a kid on the team sees how dedicated you are to the team, and you're there in the weight room, or you talked about Coach Moore there on a January 5th morning. It's negative 20 degrees, and he's in the gym. That just kind of really invests the kids more into you as a coach too, and kind of really what you're talking about in your program. So it's a really neat opportunity. So, yeah. Last couple questions then for you, Coach Zach. I think you already answered these, but if you would like to expand on it, that'd be great too. So I think you talked about parents being a parent, coaches coaching. And, but if you could give any more pieces of advice for parents or coaches, what would those pieces of advice be and why?
I think I just thinking about this question, Tim, if I could give parents any advice, I would say, and I know it's probably cliche, but just to sit back and enjoy it, but invest in your kid. We used to laugh, we would be coaching, and the parents would drop them off. Oh, I had to go to Target or something, and here we are, we're invested in kids. So invest in your kids, even in their high school years. When you get to host that team dinner, take advantage of it. You take advantage of having the kids over, inviting the kids over, to be that parent, and just you're still a role model as a parent, even though now it's the high school coaches. You're still there, and as that role model, you have to understand that as a parent, it's the coaches who coach, and you need to trust the coaches, as hard as that is, because if your son or daughter comes to you with an issue with a coach, you need, first of all, support your child, but be a listener. And just sometimes they don't want anything done. They just want you to listen, your son or daughter, to their frustrations or to their joys. Instead, we just wait to speak. Just take it into your kids. I used to have a rule with my parents. I said, when you get in the car, you have to be quiet for 3 minutes. Say nothing and just let them through. Some guys say, I made it 10 seconds, P. I did a good job. I made it 10 seconds. They just let the kids experience the experience. And as a parent, sit back, because when my kids are off to college now, as much as you want them to talk about that game that they, that semifinal game where they played great, or that whatever happened, the things they remember, Tim, are the team dinners. Mm-hmm. Yep. They remember all the they remember the variety show. My God, my boys could label the variety. Remember the songs we sang? I have no idea what songs they sang, but for them, that was the most important. So as a parent, just appreciate that. It does go fast. It's gone. Don't be the parent that is calling the coach about playing time. What a waste of time. It's a waste of the coach's time, and it's a waste of your time as a parent. The coach is making the best decision for the team. The coach is making the best decision for a team. You are never making the best decision for the team. I've been a parent. My kids always come first. And so in any of my decisions, my kids come first. Well, it's just not my realm to talk to the coach because I don't go to the practices. I don't see what's happening. So you're just wasting your time wanting to talk about things like playing time. It's actually just silly.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And I mean, thinking about you, just from everything you told us too throughout this interview here, one of the biggest things you remember from that 1996 girls basketball team was the girls at your father's funeral. Those girls there. That's the. You could probably, as a coach, you can name every single play that happened during the game, but those aren't the things you think about on a daily basis. It's those little things that happen, like coming to a funeral or those pregame talks or anything like that. So yeah, those are the things that truly matter.
It's the experiences, right? And I think I had a friend tell me 8 years ago, you can continue to gather material goods and things like that, but it's the experiences that your kids are going to remember. So we go on trips as much as we can. We just want to do different things and experience different things. That's the things they talk about. We have a pool, but no one really talks about our swimming pool. But they talk about the trip to South Carolina or the trip to Disney World, and those are the things you can build with your parents.
For sure. Last question then for you. Same kind of thing, giving advice, and now it's to student athletes. So obviously you've been around many student athletes for many years, almost 20 years coaching, over 20 years actually coaching and working in education as well. You had 4 boys that are almost done going through the high school right now as well. So if you could give student athletes 2 pieces of advice from your perspective and experiences, what would they be and why?
Well, I think the first bit of advice I would give student athletes is to invest. Invest in the work that it takes to get you where you're at. The off-season preparation, the strength training, the speed development, all of those, and even nutrition. I think Chad Fikema at the high school does a great job in the health teachers about talking to the kids about nutrition, taking care of your body. These things that you do in high school now will lead to habits that you'll continue forever as you go through. So it's that investment. If you can't invest, if you can't invest in sports as a youngster and that's your passion, well, what are you going to invest in when you get older? So it's that investment piece. And I think the second piece is to love it. Just absolutely love it. And you get to play a game. That's all it I know it's it's another cliche. It's just a game. That's all it is. And and if you're a parent and you think it's more than a game, come get on a bus with a kid after win or loss. And within about 60 seconds, that it's just a game for them. That's all. So the advice to the kids is just to understand it's a game. Turn your parents off at time because they want to talk to you about more things. I just had fun tonight, Mom and Dad. That's all it was. I just had fun playing the game. I had even more fun going to Applebee's after the game. But this was just fun for me. So again, invest and just love what you're doing.
For sure. Definitely agree with it. Coach Zach, that's all I got for you. The last thing that we do here, we turn the mic over to you. If there's anything else you want to add, anything else you want to talk about, anything I forgot to ask you, like I said, the mic is yours and you can go for it.
I think the only thing I would say if I was talking to Hastings parents in general, being a Hastings parent now, is you have the best coaches possible for your kids. In all my sports I had, the coaches always put the kid first and the team second. And the decisions that they made were based on what was best for the team with always having the interests of your child in mind. That's it. All of my boys were treated as young men from all their coaches, and they developed character and they will develop. They won't remember the wins and losses. They just won't. Those are all great things, but will they remember all the lessons that were taught by all of the different Hastings coaches? And Trent has created an athletic program where that is the biggest thing. It's why we play. And it's how we develop our youngsters. And that's what the focus is of the Hastings coaches.
I couldn't agree with you more. Coach Zach, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.